Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Hello. And hello, 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 hello. So you have to be closer.
Welcome everybody. So I think we will start in a few minutes. We got our colleague Glory is connected. Glory, can you hear us? Maybe if you can hear us, can you say this in chat? Huh? Ah, the slide is okay. Good. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Can you hear us, Glory? Hi, Glory. Can you hear us? Yes. Yeah. If I unmute, it will create a feedback. So I'm using just this thing here. I can't unmute on.
I'm promoting, but Glory is not accepting.
No, Glory doesn't need to be. Allowed to talk, yeah. Anyway, it's not very critical, but another guy called Pietro, when this guy connects, Pietro Nardi, you can upgrade him if he manages to connect. So I think we should start. Thank you for attending the session. Actually, this is it's a study. We're going to present a study that was supported by the ISM technical assistance. Beneficiary is essentially mainly AUDA NEPAD, but also African Union Commission. So the presentation will be in, I think, in 3 parts. Normally, we have our consultant, Pietro Nardi, who is supposed to connect. Maybe he's having issues to connect. So I will do a very brief outline of what was done and the methodology, the climate infrastructure resilience methodology we developed, and how it was applied to PIDA-PAP2 projects. And then our colleagues here from Engineer Godfrey from ESC and Chris Appiah, Director of Infrastructure from ECOWAS, will briefly talk about the level 2 analysis which we carried out for their respective projects in Northern Corridor and Abidjan, Lagos, and then give us some feedback and views about the appreciation or the utility of this methodology and tool. And finally, we'll listen to question and answers. We'll go to question and answer sessions, and also maybe open up discussions on suggestions and ways to improve this exercise. And our colleague Elsa from AUDA, who is here, will do the closing remarks about the way forward and how we propose to use this in the future. This is a very new initiative, only started in October last year. It's a very short study, only 50 days of expert time available. So this is what we managed to do in this very limited time and resources. But it's a way, actually, it's a proof of concept of what could be done. And the idea today is really to listen to you, to present to you what was done, and mostly listen to you about how you think this could be improved, and your views about how this could be useful for the different target groups or stakeholders. So those who are connected can see the screen. Otherwise, you can. There are 3 screens in the room. I'll try to make it bigger. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's the best we can do with this screen. So as I was saying, the terms of reference for this study was developed. Was developed by an informal working group. So we set up a group of people within AUDA NEPAD, but also including other partners, GIZ, EU, EU delegation, and AD, including the RB, Department of Agricultural and Rural Economy and Blue Economy. So for about 6 months, this group met and we brainstorm about, what do we mean by climate resilient infrastructure design methodology? And here I must acknowledge the very substantial contribution of the colleagues from African Development Bank, mainly Constant Adeyini, who kind of guided us through their. Constant is from the Climate Change and Green Growth Department of the bank, and they are very aware, very advanced in terms of climate resilience and adaptation work. So he guided the process to ensure that our definition of resilience is really a very broad definition that goes well beyond mitigation and well beyond adaptation into resilience, actually, and broader meanings of resilience than just climate resilience. So this was developed. And then we had another phase of discussions to ensure that this work is not duplicating or overlapping with parallel work streams. And one of them is the green check methodology, the SDM green track, being developed at AUDA NEPAD by our colleagues ALG, and financed by GIZ, and the other one is the AFRI-RES, which is the World Bank, UNECA, etc., AUC collaboration. So we did this work, and then the conclusion from this was that there's no overlapping. In fact, there is complementarity between these approaches, and we will see later how these tools can complement each other. So as I said, short study, 50 days, initiated in October, and we set up a weekly review meeting, mostly attended, actually, I must say, by most of the partners and stakeholders. So we meet every week to review the results and then fine-tune it as we go along. So in a nutshell, we may not have time to go through all the details of the methodology, but what is essential is that it's very broad. There are 19 groups of indicators under 7 lenses. We will see the 7 lenses. And well, the first one of them is actually a vulnerability profile. So we've identified some sources of data that can quantify the vulnerability of a project. And then there are 6 resilience dimensions. So how do we address vulnerability through resilience? We have community resilience, climate proofing, environmental footprint, which is the carbon mitigation and environment lens. And then we have something called agriculture, trade, and integration, followed by inclusivity, which includes jobs and gender, and finally alignment with partners, plans, and climate goals, etc. So these are the 6 resilience dimensions, plus the vulnerability profile. Then we've developed a scorecard rating system with customized narratives for each indicator. And we have 3 levels of analysis. We will see this in detail. So what we did in these 50 days, we applied the first level, what we call the desktop analysis, to all 69 PEDAPAP2 projects. And we initiated the level 2, more in-depth analysis with 2 projects, which are the 2 top-rated projects. One is the SGR Northern Corridor with our colleagues from EAC here. And the other one is Abidjan Lagos with our colleagues from ECOWAS, represented by Chris Appiah here. So we will listen to them about their appreciation of this tool and how it could be improved further. And finally, we will look at the way forward about the next steps, how we can build on this to develop further. So very quickly, this is the, this shows the, a snapshot of the indicators. So we have a master dashboard. It's essentially an Excel sheet showing the 19 groups of indicators under 7 lenses, and then we have a page summarizing the rationale and the links, actually, the actual hyperlinks to the sources of data. I think we have around 25 different independent sources of data to inform this process. It's a scorecard rating, so we don't attach too much importance to the rating, but more to the narratives. And it's very customized. We can adjust the weight per sector, per project, etc. So it's both quantitative and qualitative assessment. So we mentioned 3 levels of analysis. So the level 1 is basically the desk phase, which we carried out, which can be done from information at submission stage and any updates received from engagement with project owners. And this can be carried out essentially by AUDA NEPAD, focal points, sectoral experts. It's an initial steps. It provides an empirical basis to support resource mobilization and for building resilience. So it gives actually a first approach to potential for resilience, and also a rating system that enables us to focus on the key projects which have the highest potential or the highest need for resilience. Then the second step is talking to the RECs and project owners, which we started with these 2 projects, where we validate the findings, promote consensus building, and then we integrate the empirical basis with more detailed, updated analysis and in situ reports, which we may not have in public on the website, which the governments or corridor authorities, etc., may have. Finally, identification of enabling factors and key drivers to support resilience into the design for progressive appropriation of projects by national, regional decision makers. So this is the level 2, whereby the RECs and project owners can use the tool during the process of implementation. For example, in the technical design phase, they can specify specific elements to be included in the studies, in the feasibility studies, to take on board resilience. The final stage is really in the, the actual implementation, when more at national level, where we go down to things like consultation groups with local beneficiaries, stakeholders, impacted people. So this framework can guide this process. So these are the 3 levels. What are the use, actually? How can this tool be used? First, we developed a practitioner guideline to support project owners and RECs during the design phases. This summarizes all the knowledge, all the links and data sources, etc., and the process of how to use this tool. It can be used actually by the donors, climate donors and DFIs, to filter through a project pipeline. For example, the PDAPAP2, 69 projects, depending on what they're looking for, what are their selection criteria, they can filter through these 19 groups of indicators to quickly zoom into those projects which are very aligned, the most aligned to their criteria. And finally, it can provide an empirical basis and narratives customized to projects, sectors, and indicator groups to support resource mobilization for building resilience. So this is more the how to make a stronger case for resilience and adaptation to mobilize funding. Welcome. please have a seat. So about the complementarity we mentioned earlier, you see all these tools. We've copied here actually the standard classification of milestones used by AUDA NEPAD in PIDA, so S0, S1, S2A, S2B, etc. And you will see that the SDM green check, this is what was presented to us at COP27, for example. It intervenes at stages S1, S2A, S2B, up to S3B. But the climate resilient methodology actually is useful even at the S0 stage, which is it really educates project owners on resilience methodology and these 19 groups of indicators, some of which are not very known or mainstream. So it really builds awareness that these sources of data exist and these dimensions exist. And then in the more advanced feasibility and pre-feasibility stages, it can guide the terms of reference. It can guide the people writing the terms of reference for these feasibility studies to take on board some of these resilience potential. And in the more advanced stages, at the, I would say, technical design, detailed technical design stages, it can inform the terms of reference to take on board specific requirements for resilience. And finally, these narratives will customize to the project, can build a case, can make a stronger case for resource mobilization from donors. And you will see here the AFRI-RES actually is very useful in the learning from best practice in more or less the early stages. So this shows how these free tools can complement each other. And we are not duplicating across these tools. Now, I think I'll stop here. Maybe before we switch to the two projects, let me show you actually a quick overview of the actual tool. It's very small though. Sorry about this. This is because we have, I don't know whether you will see, but if you're interested, we can share this later. So you will see these are the 69 PIDA-PAP2 projects. Maybe I'll make it a little bigger. One second. Okay. At least maybe you can see something. So these are the, you will see here in the rows, you will see the 69 PIDA-PAP2 projects, and in the columns, you will see the indicators. So we start with the exposure to climatic risks, and here we've used the IPCC data. So here we switch here to the sheets I was mentioning. So you will see we've documented these links to the IPCC working group reports, the latest reports on exposure to climatic risks, and then this is on sea level rise. And then we've used, for example, the Notre Dame Adaptation Initiative Index, which is itself a composite index of, I think, 45 indicators. So these are recognized sources of data, and then you have informed risk from Europe, European Union. So these sources of data inform the project owners about the level of risk, for example, the climatic risks, precipitation and drought, etc. And adaptation to climate change is the ability to raise finance. We have then the community resilience dimensions, which is availability of early warning system data and technology to diffuse or to use this data to communicate it to the people. Then we have climate proofing infrastructure, which has a component about the systems of systems approach, how we can design systems that integrate with parallel infrastructure, and then the potential to raise finance based on the past history. Finally, the fourth one is on, the fourth one here is on the climate mitigation, potential for climate mitigation, and potential for environmental safeguards and biodiversity, etc. This is the third resilience lens. The fourth one is about the synergies with industrialization, trade, agriculture, and this is where we found the highest potential actually. So our colleagues here will explain this later, applied to the two projects. And the fifth one is on inclusivity, which is essentially jobs, rural-urban connectivity, jobs for youth and women, and also MSMEs, potential for creating jobs for micro, small, medium enterprises. Then finally, we have the alignment lens with these 4 dimensions. So alignment with NDCs, NAPAs, alignment with the EU Global Gateway Initiative, EU Green Deal, and taxonomy, which is the classification of eligible sectors for climate financing. Then we have the alignment with the continental policies, strategies, and finally we have the alignment with climate donors and DFIs, etc., with their selection criteria. So this is in a nutshell, and then you will see here, this is the narrative. The written part here is the narrative, and the score is here, and the weightage is in these columns. We can adjust the weights to customize to different sectors and subsectors, and finally we compute a kind of a weighted average score, and it is on this basis that we found out that the construction of standard gauge rail from Mombasa to Kigali, Kampala, Kigali, has the highest score, followed very closely by the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, which had the second score. So these are this is actually the level 1 application, and here, as I tried to show you, these are the sheets which summarize the rationale and the links to all the different sources of data that inform this process. So this is part of the tool. And then also we have a matrix. This is a matrix of the 19 groups of indicators and different subsectors. So the questions we ask for rail, road, or ports are maybe different. We can customize the key issues and questions to be raised for each of the 18 indicators for all the different, actually 18 subsectors in PDAP up to. So this, I will stop here for the tool. I will maybe invite now the two colleagues to talk about, their experience and what we found out for the application of this tool to the projects, to the 2 top-rated projects. So maybe Chris, can you run us through this for the Abidjan-Lagos Highway project, which we discussed. We actually briefly, we had actually 1 meeting, but then you can also outline what remains to be done, outstanding work to complete the level 2 analysis. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Krishna, and good afternoon to all of us, colleagues. So as has been explained, we work with the team from AUDA, NEPAD, and AU, the African Union Commission, to sort of test our projects against this very, laborious process. I must say we are all, just like most of you, maybe we are all at very early stages of really applying and understanding the whole tool. However, as has been presented to us, this sort of makes projects very responsive to the objectives for which they are set out to do. So even before this tool came on board, I think most of the things were being achieved through the feasibility studies, detailed design, and all that. But this sort of brings everything together to see how the projects respond to, these areas that we've looked at. So quickly to touch on the project itself and to give a pictorial picture to colleagues or to participants. Let me say, for those of you who know West Africa a little, the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, as the name connotes, connects 5 countries. It commences from Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, goes through Ghana, Togo, Benin, and ends in Lagos in Nigeria. In total, we are talking about some 1,028 kilometers of road. One unique thing about this project is that the 5 heads of states met on the margins of one of the ECOWAS summits and agreed to construct a 6-lane highway along this corridor. So we are talking of basically a new highway connecting these countries. And what makes it, and I'm not surprised maybe why it's coming second, what makes it an all-inclusive project is that we adopted the integrated corridor approach. Sorry, right from the beginning. Sorry, I have this. Yes, right from the beginning. So even at the feasibility stages, we are looking at how best the corridor or the highway, once completed, will respond to the environment or the spatial, catchment area surrounding the corridor, whilst the development of these spatial areas also contributes to the viability of investments in the corridor. So we have several components. Key to this discussion is, of course, the feasibility and financial analysis study, which we have completed. So we are at the S3 stage. Let me quickly be specific. Yes, S3A, project structuring phase. So we finished the feasibility study somewhere in November 2022, last year. We are currently recruiting the transaction advisory firm to support with the structuring and PPP tendering. As part of the feasibility study contract as well, we had a component where they will prepare the lotting of investments and the financing strategy. So that is currently ongoing. So this was just to give a background to the project for those of us who don't know much about it. Now back to the discussion point for today. As I said, aside the feasibility component, we have a component on spatial development initiatives. And as most of us are aware, the SDI initiative tries to develop the zone of influence of the corridor or the road. One is used as a spine to develop the adjoining economic zones along the corridor. So if you look at the 19 areas that Krishna had mentioned, the SDI component of the project, in addition to what was covered under the feasibility, which is usually the socioeconomic impact assessments, the environmental impact, and all those safeguards, we're also looking at the contribution of the corridor to the creation of jobs along the zone of influence of the highway as it's cuts through the 5 countries, its impact on agriculture and the industrialization drive of these corridor countries, then the also its contribution to manufacturing, manufacturing of the numerous raw materials that are sort of dotted along the corridor. Most of us are aware that the corridor ends in Nigeria, Lagos, and very sorry for this. I think I underestimated the air conditioning at the venue, right? So, so we are preparing the corridor as a single whole. That is one characteristic we have to know. It's not 5 countries implementing 5 different projects. We are coordinating the development of the corridor from the ECOWAS level. And the countries have given us the mandate to undertake the preparatory studies, mobilize resources, and do all that comes with the preparation on behalf of the 5 countries. And that also means that the corridor is impacting on the supply chain right from the beginning to the end. So if we take a typical agricultural production chain, we are not looking at maybe Côte d'Ivoire only concentrating or trying to develop the entire product chain from the farm through production to the market. We are looking at the comparative advantage of each of the 5 corridors and their contribution to develop the entire corridor. So as most of us are aware, Côte d'Ivoire, for instance, is very known to be very resourced when it comes to agricultural production. They deal in a lot of mechanized farming, large-scale farming, and all that. We know countries like Ghana also have a very high level of manufacturing and industrial environment, as well as facilities. Then Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Togo and Benin operates the free port system, and they have a lot of investor-friendly policies. Then Nigeria, of course, presents us with over 200 million population, which forms, a very large market. So this corridor is being developed primarily to focus on the comparative advantages of each of these countries. So value addition is identified among countries with these with these facilities. So when we go through like that, then you realize that the objectives of this climate resilience tool is being achieved by ensuring inclusivity, response to the economic development of these spaces, response to the communities that the project also goes through, as well as addressing the climate resilience requirements of the tool.
Right. So now to the final part of my submission, I also like to point out that because of how broad these two bases, we are not only looking at the highway component or the road component as is being studied. We're also looking at the multimodal potential and the need for the corridor to interconnect the hinterland. Very sorry for this. The hinterland countries of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. In this regard, we are looking at connecting the railway, what we call the Book for Rivière. It's sort of a ring railway that connects from the port city of Abidjan through Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, through Niamey, Niger, all the way back to the corridor in Cotonou, Benin, to link back to the markets of Nigeria through Lagos. So this is sort of a very well, thought out, integrated corridor approach project that we are implementing. I think I'll stop here for now. Try and catch some voice back, and then I'll respond as may be needed. Thank you very much.
Maybe Godfrey, if you can give us some reactions, and then I'll give some brief comments, then we can switch to your project.
Sure. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. Godfrey Nzama is my name. I work with the East African community as the principal civil engineer. And for starters, you're aware that the East African community has now expanded from the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. So the region is growing very fast. It's expanding rapidly. We started with 3 member countries. Now we are now 7. We may be heading to the 8th one very soon. To start with the Northern Corridor, SGR, I'd like to just give you a small brief of the project. In general, the East African economy depends on 2 corridors. That is the Northern Corridor and the Central Corridor. And both of these corridors aspire to be multimodal corridors. And part of also the Northern Corridor is along the alignment of the Trans-Africa Highway number 8, which runs from Mombasa to Lagos. So you can see how vital that is. Specifically looking at this development of this tool, and specifically looking at the lens, the agriculture and manufacturing trade lens, we have real results for the sections of the SGR that is already implemented, and we're also able to look at the anticipated benefits that will come along for the sections that are yet to be constructed. And so far, the SGR from Mombasa to Naivasha has already shown great potential in improving the local communities, but also in terms of value of land, value of developing the community, in terms of jobs and tourism aspects, because now you have easy connection from Mombasa to the coast. There's a lot of tourism potential in the coast as well, also tourism potential in the hinterland. The SGR is hoping to extend to at least 3 phases, to Kampala and then through to Kigali, with a spur to the DRC, and that even opens the central part of the region more, with also another spur that is to go towards the north, which is to connect South Sudan as well. Of course, the more the people, the more the benefits are. And the planned construction, of course, in terms of agriculture specifically, one element we were able to pick up when we had discussions with the Kenya Railways Corporation and also Uganda Railways Corporation, we were able to pick up some few elements. For example, there's a plan to ensure that agricultural support is given better value through construction of reefers, which will basically take the fresh produce, because you know the Western Kenya has a lot of horticulture projects, and we're expecting that to be taken to the coast and then later to the sea. Preliminarily, we've looked at this tool and we've seen that we have been able to expand elements of inclusivity, community resilience, and also identified other particular benefits looking through the areas that are yet to be connected. And for example, the Kampala section, the second phase, from Malaba to Kampala, already we have an environmental social impact assessment done onto it, and we are able to pick the benefits from there. So I'll be as brief as possible, and I think that's it, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Godfrey, for this. Maybe I'll make some quick comments, and then we can open the floor for question and answers. So to complement what Godfrey was saying, that one of the main, actually, maybe we didn't stress this enough when we briefly presented, is the fact that, I think Chris had touched on this, previously, currently what exists are studies like ESIA studies, etc., which look at a specific element of the project, environmental, social, etc. But to our knowledge, from our research, there is no such tool that can take a systemic or systems of systems or maybe system dynamics approach, because all these are moving parts. All these 19 components, there are synergies and trade-offs across them. For example, let us take a simple example. We can take examples from these two projects presented. For example, if we do a coal warehouse in Naivasha, for example, how does this impact the upstream value chains, the agricultural corridors, not only in Western Kenya, but also in Uganda, even upstream? How can these agricultural corridors benefit from exports, for example, through Mombasa in the reefers? How does this manifest into jobs, value transformation, packing, etc.? And then the other elements we can look at, for example, is electrification. What happens if we electrify the line? How does this facilitate reefers? And so instead of looking at, it's extremely difficult when all these 19, so many parts are moving. So this composite index, that was the idea of developing a composite index, of saying that in the do-nothing scenario where we are today, we can assess what is the potential? We can talk about potential. This is a potential, and then we can quantify the composite index rating of this rail line within the corridor. Then we can say, for example, in this case, a study on what would be the impact of a coal warehouse, which then impacts not only trade, it impacts many other groups of indicators, and we can revisit all of them to reassess them, update them, and that is what I call the system dynamics contribution of this tool. In the case of Abidjan Lagos, for example, I think Chris touched on this. He mentioned completing a study. This requires a study, update of the feasibility study of the book Ferroviaire, to look at what would be the impact of adding a rail to complete the loop from Abidjan all the way to Lagos, which doesn't exist. And this would have impact in terms of multimodal connectivity between the highway itself, the ports, the hub ports, the hinterland network of road and rail, and all these agricultural corridors in terms of resilience of value chains, supply chains, etc. So these are just two examples to illustrate with you the benefit of this tool as a way to model very complex, actually, hugely complex systems across so many dimensions. How do you model them? This is just a very small contribution to this, just to illustrate to you the value of composite index and the narratives, how the narratives can be supported by data, actually. Not only narratives, but data to support the narratives. But what remains to be done in both cases are additional studies to look at inclusivity, community resilience, climate proofing, etc. So it is not finished, it is just the beginning, and it can, this is what I said in the beginning, it will guide all the future studies. All the future studies can now take on board these dimensions in the terms of reference of the studies to make sure that they contribute towards the resilience. So I think after these two presentations, we had the way forward, but I think before the way forward, we'll stop here and maybe listen to question and answers and discussions from the room, and if anybody is connected online, let me see. We have 12 people connected, but the problem is I can't see the list of participants. I see there are 12 people connected. I can only see. Sorry. There were panelists and attendees. Okay. Constant is connected. Yes. Okay. We have yeah. Glory, our colleague, is connected. Okay, great. So maybe if any of you want to intervene, please raise your hand. I think Constant, since Constant is here, maybe please let us know if you can talk, Constant. We would like you to maybe make some comments, since you have played such a key role in the project. Constant, our colleague from the African Development Bank, and then we'll open the floor to the room and to panelists. Any questions, clarifications you may have? Yes, from ALG, yeah.
Hi,
Jean-Michel, please.
Thanks for this presentation. I have a question. In the past, I was honored by, on the one hand, the ministries of Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda to advise on the development of the Northern Corridor, on the SGR project. And on the other hand, in 2016, I was engaged by the African Development Bank to work on the development of the corridor Abidjan-Lagos. Both projects are really challenging, very impressive. They have a lot of potential, but the fact is that in the last, should I say, 10 years, they did not progress adequately in speed. So we are progressing, but not at the speed that we would like to see. So those are challenging projects, and my question is, once they got the best rating from your tool, which is the contribution that you are expecting from your tool to move faster those two projects? So in which specific area do you think that you can help to deblock those two projects, if there is any blocking point that I don't know? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John, for this question. I think the best people to answer are our panelists here, but I think I have my own comments I will make. Maybe would you like to intervene first, Chris, and then I can make some comments?
Yes, maybe just to give a clarification. With regards to how best the tool can contribute to expedite them, I think it will come back to you, yes. But I think maybe when I was setting the context, I should have clarified this, that yes, even before I joined ECOWAS 12 or 13 years ago, there was the nomenclature Abidjan-Lagos Highway corridor, right? But what we are talking about today is a different project. The scope is different. So I just want to bring that context out clearly so that it also informs what the two can do to help. The first thing is that we started the technical studies, obviously for every such huge project, in 2019 March. As I said, we were going through all the 4 phases: feasibility, detailed engineering design, financing, and then financing. As we sit today, we've completed the first 2 phases. The feasibility and the preliminary designs have been completed. So as we sit today, if we complete the recruitment of the transaction advisors, we can start talking to investors after destruction, right? To attract equity, debt, and all that in the PPPs we are looking at. So that is the project we are talking about. What is also peculiar about this project, and I think is also a very important aspect these two must look at, is the legal and institutional arrangements around such cross-border, multi-jurisdictional projects. Luckily for us, the heads of states themselves of the 5 countries did not just speak, they signed a project treaty themselves, not their foreign ministers, not their road ministers. The 5 presidents themselves signed a corridor treaty to say we, the presidents, agree to undertake this project. And then they assigned, the responsibility. So in terms of de-risking the project, that high-level legal or environmental document, legal environment document clearly communicated the intention of the presidents to the project. So that's the context we are looking at. Now, how will this contribute to fast-track the attainment of the objectives? I think the first thing we all have to admit is that the overarching objective of all these project preparatory activities is to attract financing, right? Now, financiers, be it the private sector or public sector, all have their areas of focus. So we have the traditional financiers who will come in with their loans, grants, and all that. The private sector is also looking at viability, profitability, and all that. But then we've also gradually gone to appreciate that all these climate funds, all these green funds and all that are also sort of looking for projects that are ready. And that's why I see some of these tools being relevant. As I said from the beginning, this is just the beginning, and I think Krishna also mentions that a lot. But this tool sort of brings to the same table financiers with all sort of objectives. So whether yours is for the profit or for greening the continent or the environment, or you're a public finance institution or any of these two, if we get it right, has the potential of reducing maybe the transaction cost or the preparation cost. And maybe I'll use the process used in our ports, because I'm from the transport sector, where somebody submits declaration to clear their cargo. And you have about 17 agencies, right, at the port, all with what they are looking out for. As we all know, this has contributed to inefficient port procedures. So something like what we call the single window, tool came, where all these agencies at the port sort of work through an imaginary single window to process your declaration. So you submit it through this window, and once it comes back, everybody is satisfied. And that is why I see this tool, the potential of this tool. So we are preparing our projects, whether you are for profit, you are for environment, you are for whatever, we want our road built. Now, such a tool has the potential to bring all the objectives of all the financiers in the same index, and once we satisfy that index, we have automatically responded to the needs or the requirements of all these investors. So that is where, you know, I envisage the value addition to fast track the attainment of the objective, right? Not necessarily to correct the delays we've had for the 10 years, because the contexts are different, as I said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, for these very, very valuable comments. I would just add maybe two small things. One is to raise actually PPF, project preparation funding, for some of these components mentioned. For example, the SDI studies to be carried out, not yet fully. So to make a case for that, how do we make a case to raise the funding for these studies? If we have a tool like this and we show the synergy is possible, we can say these studies are not only going to impact the value chain, supply chain, but will also have an impact, will also impact the inclusivity, the community resilience, the climate proofing, etc. Then that it's a packaging tool, and it also enables us to document, to quantify and document the synergies. How do actions or improvements, incremental improvements in one area like SDI studies impact all the other 19, all the other lenses and groups of indicators. So it's a way to have a composite index that will measure it, and then to present this to these sources of PPF, etc. Thank you.
Maybe I could also chip in a little. In terms of the SGR, you probably have seen that there's total commitment from the summit, that is the head of states. The heads of state for all the countries that is involving the SGR, they really want to develop. And as you probably have seen, the Central Corridor, that is the Tanzania Railway Corporation has actually, they have expanded rapidly. The construction is ongoing. And when you look at also the Northern Corridor, you see the development of Nairobi-Mombasa section, which is done. And for other countries like Uganda to develop, obviously they would want to see that the section reaches to the border, and then they can pick up from there. And as I'm aware that I come from Uganda, first of all, so I'd like to say that our president is very, very committed to this project. We are hoping as soon as an agreement, a bilateral agreement is reached between Kenya and Uganda to bring the SGR to the border, then we will be sure that the inner parts of the region will be connected. Back to the tool, and I think from the presentation, it was clear that this tool is actually, first of all, it simplifies life when you're trying to justify the bankability of these projects in terms of PPPs, but also even for public projects, it gives you some sense of economic analysis into it, and therefore having that combined in, and I think Chris also said it clearly, in terms of trying to accelerate the process. I want to go straight to your question. To accelerate the process, we may have very little control from that, but what this tool helps is that it brings the aspect of the financiers looking at objectively the project, because it combines both qualitative and quantitative results, which is the qualitative aspect. Many people might say that is subjective, but then you have data sources to support that's what gives the value. So I'd like to probably give you that point of information. I don't know how satisfied you are, but maybe Krishna, you may want to appraise him more of how you think how this tool might affect the progress of these projects. Like Chris said, we can't do much with the past, but we can do a lot with the future. Thank you.
Exactly. Just to complement what Godfrey has beautifully summarized, this tool, I think the value of benchmarking tools is the objectivity. For example, if we take an analogy with the complementarity with SDM or Green Check, Green Check is a very, very objective historical database tool. So we look at the historic performance of projects, regions, etc., and then we benchmark the project, which is great, which is good, which is based on the data. But this is a more future-looking, prospective tool, saying how could we improve on this project? What new elements, new dimensions, like we mentioned SDI studies, we mentioned adding a rail loop, we mentioned cold train upgrading, etc. So it's looking into the future, and how do these improvements build resilience across all these dimensions, all these lenses. So it's more a prospective tool, decision aid tool, strategic tool, and the narrative part actually describes the potential and the level of analysis, the depth of analysis as we proceed. It's a cumulative tool, so level 1 is desk study, level 2 fine-tunes the data, improves the analysis. Level 3 can actually go to much more detail. We can, for example, if we did the SDI study, whatever results came could feed back, could be integrated in all the indicators and update all of them to make it an ongoing tool. And it's really a tool that can be used throughout the life cycle of the project. It doesn't stop at the resource mobilization. Thank you. Any other, let me see the online group. I can't see any. Yeah, somebody, yeah, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Osea Nyangweso from the ESC. I've just got some comment for Chris on the Abidjan-Lagos corridor. I know at the moment you are doing the infrastructure part of it. That is putting up the lanes. You talked of 6 lanes, probably with interchanges. I'm just wondering whether you are thinking about the logistics part of the corridor. And in this respect, I'm talking about clean air and transport emissions. As you know, Africa is full of cars which are aged and which emit a lot of negative carbon gases. And the shift now is to move to clean air. So I'm wondering whether you have put into consideration the need for provision, for example, of non-motorized traffic, which would promote transportation like walking and cycling, the provision for electric buses and mass transit, for example, BRT, bus rapid transit lanes, which would promote mass transport and discourage the use of private cars as much as possible, especially in urban areas. Also related to that would be the provision for light rail in the urban areas where the corridor will pass, so that you promote intra-urban transport through light rail systems. And one area where, Africa in general we have a big issue is on the areas of road safety. And road safety affects the economy and the environment in equal measures. So what efforts or what measures is Abidjan-Lagos Corridor Development putting to avert negative road safety statistics in the region? Putting, for example, like I said, non-motorized traffic, intelligent transport systems, and such like. I know these are things for the future, but future things start at the planning stage. If you don't plan for mass transit, for example, it's very difficult to put them once the infrastructure is in place. We see, for example, in East Africa, Dar es Salaam is promoting bus rapid transport. But they are lucky in respect that there's plenty of land in Tanzania. But there are some countries where there's no land where you can put bus rapid transit systems. And in Nairobi, they had to go up to put a viaduct, the Nairobi Expressway. So I think it is important to plan early and ensure that whatever future prospects will be there are taken care of at this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hosea, for this variable. Maybe Chris, you want to respond to this?
Okay. Thank you very much, Hosea. Yeah. So just a clarification from the beginning. The project is purely a cross-border highway project. Right, so the objective is more geared towards facilitating the movement of goods and persons along the corridor. So a lot of focus is on the trunk road. Yes, let me put it like that. Trunk road sections, or the regional corridor sections of this highway. That's the first clarification. Because of this, we are not expanding the scope of the project to cover urban transport modes. However, as part of, because this is being developed as a smart corridor, as part of the design, the feasibility and the design, preliminary designs, we took cognizance of the fact that the highway should interface efficiently with the urban centers in which it traverses. So we have, as you rightly said, we have almost about 69 interchanges along the over 1,000-kilometer road. Now, for those interchanges that sort of merges the local traffic into the international traffic, we have a component on urban planning and urban transport, integrated components to make sure that the movement of traffic, and I'm happy you mentioned the non-motorized transport. We have countries like Benin, Togo, and even Lagos, until they banned it, where a great percentage of the urban traffic includes the two-stroke, motors, as well as a lot of cycling, and other forms of urban non-motorized transport modes. So along those sessions, we have integrated into the design facilities to make sure these local traffic that interfaces with the international movements are very well catered for. But we are not going into the details of the BRTs and the light rails, because these are more of the urban transport options. By maybe coincidence or by original design, the section in Lagos had already been planned for the inclusion of a great deal of public transport, efficient public transport from the Mile 2, for those of you who know Lagos. That's from the beginning or the end of the corridor towards Benin, to have BRT and light rail options. Those have already been developed, actually. The Lagos State have gone into concessionary agreements, and those are being done. But this is the Lagos State government's addition to the corridor we are developing. So we are looking at the international traffic angle of it. As I said, if you look at the details of what we are doing, there is very little we have left out in terms of the futuristic vision of this highway. In fact, sometimes people think that we are being even unrealistic, but we've taken the smart corridor approach even to a very high extent. And if you look at the tolling system, for instance, that we are applying, we are going fully automated. And the prerequisites for this means that the participating countries should have automated vehicle databases. They should be ready to have automated passes, the banking system, the payment system, and all that. But we are developing all these as part of the tolling system to ensure the investors, that any dollar you put in, your revenue is sort of secured. So futuristic, clean, and all that, we are looking at that. On the rolling stock side, the buses, the vehicles, and other forms of vehicle, vehicles that will traverse the corridor, that's a whole different program on its own. We are concentrating on the highway. Parallel to that, the ECOWAS Commission is working with the countries to, and actually the World Bank has also approached us on some fleet renewal programs, where we are looking at substituting the existing, combustion-based buses and trucks, haulage trucks, with more greener trucks. So that's a different initiative, but hopefully all these pieces will come together to ensure a very clean, and green corridor. Finally, on road safety, one other peculiar characteristics of this highway is the fact that we are harmonizing the standards across the 5 countries for the highway. So you will not start from Cote d'Ivoire, get to Ghana, and you are seeing different signages or different safety signages. So the first phase of the study actually involved the harmonization of the design and safety standards. So we have already harmonized these standards, and that is what is being applied to the design, and it will also be applied at the operational phase, where we will have the same sort of, because we have 5 countries, 3 of them are francophone, and so naturally they lean towards the Euro codes, whilst Ghana and Nigeria go by the AASHTO, the British system, British design standards, or the AASHTO for the Americans. So right at the beginning, we had to harmonize this and have a common set of design standards before we started. So we've ensured that all these are harmonized along the corridor. Operational phase would have concessions, PPPs. So the level of service that will be required in these performance agreements that will be signed with the private investors will ensure that safety standards are kept at a certain level, right? Because these are very high-level concessional agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, for these clarifications. And so I think any other questions? I don't see anything in the online for the online participants. There's a Q&A. Okay. Talks. Okay. No, we'll look at this. So what I think we can come back to questions, but I think we have the last part remaining, which is the way forward. So I will just run through this one slide, and then I'll invite our colleague Elizabeth from AudaNEPAD to give us her view, some comments, and I think close the session. So we've listened actually to this, the genesis of this project, how we started with 6 months of preparatory work on terms of reference, then actually less than, I would say, 2 months, 3 months of actual work. But this is just the beginning, and we have piloted it through these 2 projects. So this is still, I would say, early stages. So if any of you have any comments, suggestions, we are all welcome to communicate with us about how this can be improved. And I can see immediately, I think the 3 immediate uses of this going forward would be first the RECs and project owners to apply the methodology through the 3 levels of analysis. And we just scratched the level 2 actually through these initial interactions. So now we need to go deeper and then complete level 2 in the sense that get more data. And eventually, once this can lead to more detailed studies, for example, SDI studies or very technical studies on cold chain and all that, then we can go into level 3 and start engaging at more national level. So that is the first application. The second would be, I would say, more institution related. All this data which is coming from all the analysis, the empirical analysis from PIDA projects could be used actually to build a portfolio, a pipeline, I would say, of climate adaptation and resilience pipeline, where we can also quantify the delta, the incremental funding needed. For one way of looking at this is all this analysis and presentation and packaging could be used to raise the small incremental deltas needed for additional studies to improve resilience. If we can guarantee that this money, this PPF will be specifically used for a specific purpose to address a specific question leading to resilience, then it makes a much stronger case for donors to give the money. So this is what AudaNEPAD could use, this tool. And finally, at the level of AUC, I don't know whether we have AUC colleagues connected. I think I see Ayub is here, PIDA coordinator. So there is an interest, actually Director Kazaura, when we presented this earlier, suggested that if we come up with a tool which is consensual, where RECs are involved, member states, and which is really anchored in PIDA PAP2, and as we proceed with further validation, as this utility and usability of this tool is validated through more application, more feedback, this bottom-up empirical feedback could be used actually to guide the continental policy on just transition, green smart corridors, which I think GIZ is supporting AUC. So this is an area of potential collaboration with a parallel work stream, more on the policy side at AUC, how we could use the bottom-up feedback to complement a more top-down kind of policy that is being developed. So I think that's all from the presentation. If there's still no other questions, maybe Elsa, can you give us some your remarks?
Thank you so much, Krishna. My name is Elsabeth Tesfahannes Tedros. I'm the Principal Program Officer working on infrastructure finance for AudaNEPAD. I would like to acknowledge our AudaNEPAD colleagues here from different countries and also our colleagues from AUC. who's sitting right now. And I would like to commend Krishna, who has put a lot of effort along with EU ISM working with us on this regard. I would like to, I think you've stolen my speech, Krishna, in the way forward. So I think what I would like to say is the work that we're doing in early project preparation is very important and vital in bankability of PDA-POP projects. And I think our colleagues in REX and government agencies can agree with that. We are now supported by GIZ in the work we're doing with early project preparation through our instrument SDM. Now we are advanced into, as Krishna has mentioned, the green track, the green check methodology, which enables PDA-POP 2 projects, the 69 projects, to see and filter and see how they can qualify for climate finance funding. The current utilization of climate finance is 3% for Africa, 3%. And I believe this tool can also see how we can centralize our efforts in qualifying for these funds. And I think you've already mentioned that, and I won't reiterate that. But I think what is greatly needed is the training. And I see somebody from my resilience training in the back of the room, where we were trained by the UN in regards to climate finance and resilience. And I encourage government agencies to request such training, because we can't just depend on consultants for bankability of these projects. Lastly, I would like to say welcome. I hope you engage with us all. We're not so many, but AUDA-NEPAD is here as the implementing agency of our flagship, AU flagship program, PIDA. We have a big deliverable by 2030. And I encourage you all to engage and to see how we can all assist you as well to do a better job, and how Africa can capture the climate funding that is now basically at the forefront of all DFIs. Thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting you all.
Thank you, Elsa, for these closing remarks. So if maybe what if you would like, those who are connected, colleagues who are connected, please leave your email in the chat, and then we can send you some additional, you can send comments, we can reach out to you. Thank you everybody for your patience and discussions and contributions today. Thank you. Also, thank our colleagues from EAC and ECOWAS who have supported us in this. Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you.